Hi, I'm Quentin with Xpedition Archery. Today I'm going to show you guys how to assemble a Viking X380 crossbow from start to finish, unboxing to finished product. So in the box we'll have your prod, limb, and string assembly all put together. All of your instruction manuals and how to safely cock your crossbow when it is assembled. Shoulder strap, quiver assembly, scope, your rail and trigger assembly, foot stirrup, cocking rope, and each crossbow comes with 3 bolts. Most of the tools that you'll need to assemble the crossbow come in this little bag here. There are a couple screws, a slide, some wax, your stirrup, and a couple Allen wrenches. Most of your tools, like I said, are in this little packet. For the scope, if the rings aren't already attached to the scope, you might need a Phillips screwdriver. So I start by laying out my tools, my hardware, my cable slide, taking all the packaging off. So on the prod assembly, there are these 2 holes towards the front of the bow. There are set screws in them. These 2 holes is where your stirrup will slide in. We'll need to loosen these 2 set screws before we put this in. I'm going to wait to do this first. I'm going to assemble the prod onto the rail to get started. So the prod will fit onto the rail by sliding it in here. We'll have to install the cable slide, and there are 2 little screw posts here that slide into 2 little holes in the prod. I'll take this rail lube, and it's basically string wax. What I do before assembling any of this, I put plenty of wax on the cables in this portion here, because this is where a lot of the friction happens on the cables in the slide. So on the cable slide here, there are 2 grooves, one deep, one shallow. The deep groove, the bigger groove, goes towards the front of the prod. And what I do, I split the cables like so. And when looking down on the prod from the top, the cables cross on the left side of the bow. So that deep groove is towards the front of the bow, and the cables cross on the left side of the cable slide. So from here, I'll assemble the prod onto the rail. So I slid this cable slide underneath the rail, and I pivoted the prod up, and now I just slide it in place. And those 2 little posts coming off the front of the rail slide into these holes into the prod. You'll notice the holes line up, and on the underside of the assembly there's this 3rd hole here. I'm going to put a screw in here and 2 screws here. These screws are included. The 2 longer screws go in the front of the crossbow, and the smaller one goes into the bottom. You can install these using the included Allen wrench. What I like to do is start all 3 screws, make sure everything lines up, then I'll tighten them down. Then I make sure all the screws are snug down. Then we'll move to the foot stirrup. Like I mentioned before, there are 2 screws on the bottom of the prod that need to be loosened up. Then your foot stirrup will be installed. So looking at it, this little U shape in the foot stirrup will be facing down. So it'll be installed just like this. Okay, the only thing left to do now with this crossbow is install the scope. get the quiver attached and the sling. So in the scope box, this should also include all mounting hardware. So the scope has instructions. It comes with rings, an included Allen key for clamping the rings to the scope. And I start by loosening up the clamps. And I face the tightening knobs of these bases to the right side of the crossbow. And I'll lay the scope in, your adjustment knobs, one facing up or two facing up, one facing to the right. And I lay the scope into the bases like so. They don't have to be perfectly in line yet. We can do that when the scope is on the crossbow. I keep these loose too in case you need to adjust spacing to fit on the rail on top of the crossbow. I'll loosen up these adjustment knobs on the side of the bases. Then you just place the scope on the top of the crossbow. Once your scope is on the crossbow itself here, I keep everything relatively loose so I can move it, so I can level my scope. So when you're holding it, you can get your crosshairs level, and you can adjust the bases back and forth for your eye relief. Once I get the scope where I want it, I tighten everything down. So all that's left to do on this, for demonstration purposes, is just tighten the rings and tighten the base down, and this crossbow is assembled. From there, it's just a matter of attaching the quiver to the bottom and shooting. Now for the quiver, everything you'll need for the quiver is in this little bag. You have your mounting block, a quick detach, and the quiver itself, and all the hardware. So I like to take the quick attach block. This actually goes on the crossbow itself. This never comes off. What I like to do right away is install it. And how I like to do it, there's kind of a peak. It's kind of a triangle shape on the top here. I have that facing forward on the crossbow. It's a matter of just installing 2 Allen screws in those recessed holes into these holes. Once that block is installed, the only thing left to do for the quiver is to attach this block to the back of the quiver. And you can flip this around depending on how you want your quiver to sit on your crossbow, whether you want the hood off to the right side or the left side. I'm just going to put it on with no direction in mind, just to show you how to install it. So these 2 little pieces sit in these recessed holes. You just press fit it in there. And there are 2 screws that are included, and you use a Phillips screwdriver to install those screws. From here, it's a matter of just installing your bolts into the quiver. Then you can install the quiver onto the crossbow itself. So when the quick attach works, you just flip this lever and you can pull it out and reinstall it. So the crossbow is ready to shoot. This concludes our video on how to assemble an Xpedition crossbow. The process is the same for all of our crossbows. To see how to safely cock and use our cocking devices, whether it's a rope or a crank style device, reference our video on how to safely cock a crossbow.